Hello and welcome to another Flutter tutorial. I've got great feedback on my videos and people say that my content is unique, and I'm really happy that I'm going in the right direction. So if you have not subscribed to the channel now, do it, and also press the bell icon so you can get the notifications of my next videos. Now, this video is part 1 of the 2-part series in which we are going to see how we can implement an animated drawer within a Flutter application. And this tutorial is highly inspired from Marcin's talk at Flutter Europe, and you can also find the link to that talk in the description of this video. Now, before we jump into the code, let's see how the end result of this video should look like. So we should have an app which has a drawer at the background and the content at the foreground, and then we should be able to toggle the drawer using this menu button. And also, when the drawer is opened and the user taps on the main content, the drawer should be closed. So let's jump into the code now. Alright, so the target for this video is that we are going to implement the app drawer with minimal animation. And I'm going to show you how animations work with simple transitions and scaling techniques. So first of all, let's see what we have so far as the app. So we have this main dot, and inside we have a material app, and then we are using the home page as the home for our application, and it resides in the pages home dot. So you can see that we have the text here, animate everything, and you can see that on the view as well, and then we just have some styling. So first of all, what we need to do is to create an app drawer component that we can use with the home page. So in order to do so, I'm going to create a file here, and I'm going to name it appdrawer.dot. And this file will contain a stateful widget, but it will also have an animation controller. So first of all, I'm going to import the material package, and then I'm going to create an animation stateful widget. So I'm going to call it app drawer. And if you look closely, it's actually a very simple stateful widget, but it also has this animation controller which is being initiated in the init state, and also it is being disposed when we have this component or this page being disposed. So this is pretty simple. Now, one thing that we need to do is to also provide a duration to this animation controller that we will use later on. So here, first of all, we will create a static duration variable. So we can say duration, and here we can say duration, and I'm going to provide milliseconds 300, which is a really nice value for the human eye for the animations. And then we are going to provide this duration here. So we can say duration, and then here we can say app drawer state dot and then duration. So now we've got this variable assigned. The next step is to see how we can architect the app drawer and the component itself or the page itself. So as you have seen in the video earlier, that we have two things. One is the app drawer, which is at the background, and the second thing is the content, which is on the front. So in order to make sure that that happens, we have to have two things along with the stack widget. So inside the stack widget, we will have the app drawer as well as the child which is passed within this drawer. So first of all, what we need to do is we can say stack here, and inside we would have the children array. Now what we need here is actually first of all this content. So we should be able to pass a child to this app drawer, and then that child should be presented here in the stack. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to the main dot, and here I'm going to use the app drawer. And then we are basically going to use that. If I just save this now, I'm going to save this file here, and then inside here, I'm going to basically import that from the package. And now we have this. Now if I save this, you will see that we have nothing on the screen, and that's because the home page is gone. It's not being used. So what I need to do is to be able to pass this as a child here. But in order to do so, I have to go to the app drawer and make sure that we accept a child here. So what we can do here is that we can say final widget, and then we have a child here. And then here I'm going to use the constructor. So I'm going to say app drawer. Here I'm going to say key this dot child, and then we are going to call the super method with key set to key. And that's it. Now it should be able to accept a child. So I'm going to go to main dot, and here I'm basically going to provide child, and here I can say home. So now if I save this, it still doesn't show, and that's because we have to go back to app drawer and that child that we have got so far, we need to put that in the children array. So here I can simply say widget.child, and that's all. So I'm going to save this, and you can see that now we have this working. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that in this stack, we need to have the app drawer component as well. So for that, I already have a code snippet. So I'm going to add this custom drawer, and let me show you what this has. So this has a material widget, and inside we have a safe area, we have theme, and then inside we have just a column with multiple list tiles and some text. So if I just save this and actually use this custom drawer inside the stack, you will see what that looks like. So I'm going to just say custom drawer, and here if I hit save, this is actually what we have. So we have some text, we have these list tiles that we can use, and then nothing else. So we have this brightness.dark, and this is important because this actually allows us to have these white texts on this drawer. So if I change this to light, you will see what happens. You can see that this now becomes dark. So it's a really neat trick to have white text whenever you're using within a component. So the next thing is that we have the stacks and all the list tiles, which is good, but we actually want this custom drawer to be behind the content. So I'm going to move this up, and stack works in a way that the first child is always behind the second child. So now we have this child or the home page that we passed on top of the custom drawer. Now the next thing is to make sure that we are animating it, and let's first see how would the end result look like. And in order to do so, I'm going to apply some of the techniques with transform. So here I'm going to say transform, and then what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to provide child and then widget.child, and then we have to provide the transform property. So here what I'm going to do is that I'm going to start with matrix 4, and then I'm going to say identity, and then on top of this I'm going to use translate. And here we have to provide a value for how much we want to translate this particular child. So for that, I'm just going to create a variable. I can say double here, and then I can say max slide, and I'm going to provide a value of 255 here. So once we have done this, what I'm going to do is I can simply provide this max slide here. And now if I save this, you can see that it now has moved to the right side. So if it's 0, it doesn't move, but if it's 255, it moves to enough space that now we can basically click on all these items. So this is really good. The next thing according to our target is that we need to scale this down a bit as well, so it looks like the target that we want to achieve. So in order to do so, I'm going to use some scaling. So I can say scale, and here we have to provide another value. So what we can do here is we can provide 0.7. And that's what actually we want. So you can see that now it has scaled down as well. So it has translated as well as this has scaled. Now the problem here is that we are actually showing this on the right side, but it's not centered. So how do we make that happen? So first of all, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to remove this translate. And now if I save, you can see that this has scaled. Now we need this initially to be in the center or center left. So in order to do so, we can say simply alignment, and here we can say alignment dot center left. And if we save this, you can see that this is the initial position that we have. And then if we actually translate it as well, this is the final position that we want. So by default, it is on the left, and then we translate this to the right. Now you might be wondering that we could also use center right. So if I use that and if I remove translate, you would see that what happens. So this is what it looks like. So this is now bound to the right side, which is center right, but this doesn't allow us to click on any of these items properly, or these are not visible enough, or it just looks ugly. So for that we have the center left, and then we also have the translate to make it look good. Now that we have this, the next step is to animate this, because this is the end result, but it's not going to be the initial position. So how do we do that? First of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this stack, and I'm going to wrap this inside an animated builder. So this is where the fun begins. So I'm going to say animated builder, and here we need to provide a builder which has a build context, and I'm just going to use underscore here because we are not going to use this. And then finally we need to basically return this stack. So I'm gonna cut this from here, remove this child, and here we can say return, and then I'm gonna paste this. So now that we have this, the next step is also to add an animation here, and this is where our controller comes into play. So we are going to provide the controller here. Now if we hit save, you can see that everything is working fine and we have no issues. If I just remove this and save, you can see that we have an error. So we need to provide the animation anyways. So now that we have this controller provided, the next step is to make sure that we are using the controller values for translating and scaling. But before that, let's create some helper functions. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to create some functions. So I can say void close, and this is going to close the drawer. So I can say controller dot reverse. So the animation that we are going to use will open the drawer when we go forward, and then we close the drawer when we go backwards. So I'm going to say void open, and this is going to be controller forward. So I can say controller dot forward. And we will also have a function for toggling this. So I can say void toggle. And here we are going to check if the drawer is opened or closed, or in other words, I can say if we have the controller and the animation forward is completed. So if it's completed, then we need to close the drawer when we are toggling. And if it's not completed, which means that the drawer has not been opened yet, so I'm going to say open. And that's pretty much it. Now we have some helper functions that we can use for opening and closing the drawer. Now the next step is actually to use this toggle function. So for that, what I'm going to do here is that I can wrap this animated builder inside a gesture detector. So I can say gesture detector, and here I can say on tap, and inside I can say toggle. And that's it. Now if I save this, this will actually not work because we are not doing anything in the toggle, or actually we are doing something in the toggle, but we are using the hard-coded values of max slide and scale here. Now in this particular section, we will have some maths involved. So I'm pretty sure that if you're programming, you are pretty fluent with math, or you might love it to some extent. So what we need to do here is we have to create some variables. So inside this animated builder's builder method, I'm going to create a couple of variables. So for instance, I'm going to say double, and then I'm going to say animation val, and here I'm going to say controller dot value. Now this value is ranging between 0 and 1. So when there's nothing happening, it starts from 0, and then when the animation finishes, it goes towards 1. So we have to calculate some of the logic here. So for that, I'm going to create two variables. First, I'm going to say translate val, and this is going to be the value that we will use for translations. Now, as I said, it is between 0 and 1. So what I can do here is that I can say animation val multiply by 255 or max slide value. So what would happen is that initially it could be like 0, and then if it multiplies by max slide, it still says 0, so there will be no translation. But towards the end, the value would be 1, and it will multiply by 255, and it will be translated to 255 in that case. So I'm just multiplying this. Now I'm going to use this and actually will show you how this works. So I'm going to just remove this line for now. And now if I hit save, you can see that we have no scaling, but if I click, you can see that it came from right to left and from left to right. Now, in order to show you the initial position, I'm going to open this and I'm going to run this again. So we are sure that initially it's at the 0 position, as you can see. So now if I click, you can see that the toggle method is fired. It animates forward, and then it translates from 0 to 255. And when I click this again, the reverse animation is triggered, and then the value becomes 0, and thus it is at its initial position. So this is fine now. Now let's talk about how do we scale. So for scaling, we have this value 0.7, right? But how do we calculate that here? So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create another variable called double scale val. And here, what I'm going to do is that instead of putting 0.7, I can say 1 minus 0.3, which is exactly the same thing. But instead of just doing this, I'm also going to use the animation value. So I'm going to copy and paste it here and then multiply this with this 0.3. So initially what would happen is that this value is going to be 0. So 0 multiplied by 0.3 is going to be 0, and then 1 minus 0 is still 1. So the scale initially will still be 1, which means that it will take the full screen. But then towards the end, this animation well would be 1. So 1 into 0.3 becomes 0.3, and 1 minus 0.3 equals 0.7. So we get the target value. So I'm going to just copy this, and then I'm just going to paste this here, and now we are going to save and run this. So if I click here now, you can see that we are now translating as well as scaling, and it actually looks like what we want in the end. And this is amazing. We have great progress so far. The only issue we have right now is that I cannot actually click on any of these items. As soon as I tap here, you can see that the toggle method is fired, and the reason is we have this gesture detector on the whole animation builder containing the stack, containing the two items that we have on the screen. So it's basically tapping on anywhere on the screen. So it doesn't matter where I tap. Now, in order to fix that, first of all, we need to remove this on tap from here, which means that this is not going to trigger any kind of toggle scenario. So then how do we do that? What I'm going to do is that I'm going to have an app bar at the top with a button which toggles this drawer. So in order to do so, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to pass the app bar here to the app drawer, or actually to the home component. So what I'm going to do here is that first, I'm going to create an app bar inside this build method. So I'm going to say app bar, and here I'm going to say app bar, and here I can say app bar, and here title, text, and here I can say Flutter. And then for the leading, we have icon, button, and inside I can say the icon will be icons.menu, and that's it. So if I save this now, nothing would happen because we actually need to pass this app bar inside the home page. So I need to be able to pass this app bar here into home, but home actually does not accept any app bars. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to say final app bar, and here I'm going to use the constructor as before. So I can say simply key, and here this dot app bar, and I'm going to use super key. Now that we have this in place, once we get the app bar, we should be able to use that inside the scaffold. So here in the scaffold, I'm going to use the app bar, and I'm going to say widget.appbar. Now we only need to pass this app bar from the main dot. So I'm going to go to main dot, and here we have this app bar, and if I just type here app bar, we can actually pass this. Now let's save everything and now try this out. So you can see that now we have this app bar in the home page, and the way we have structured everything is that we have the material app, inside we have app drawer, inside we have home, and inside we have the app bar. So that's the hierarchy we have so far. So if I click here, nothing would happen because we don't have any listener here. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to say on pressed, and here we have to use the toggle method of the app drawer. And that will not work because we have this app bar being passed in the home, whereas the app drawer is a parent. So in order to call a function of a parent from a child, we can use context. And the way we do that is that we have to create a function here in the app drawer that the child can access. So in order to create that, what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to say app drawer state, and this is going to be a static method. And the function name would be off, and here first of all we will pass a build context, and then what we need to do is that we need to say find and sister state of type, and here we need to provide the type as well. So I can simply say here that we have the app drawer state. Now we can use this off function from the main dot now. So what would happen is that if I go here, I can simply say app drawer dot, now we have this off method available. So here we are providing context, and here if we do toggle, we are actually getting the function. Now everything is fun and games so far, so I'm gonna just save this and show you that it does not work. So if I click here, you can see that we get an error. And why do we get an error? Do you have any idea of what's happening? So the reason is that we pass the context here in the off method and it tries to find app drawer state in the parent state. So if I go back to main dot, this context that we are passing is actually the context of the whole app. It's the entire app. And then we are saying, hey, take this context and try to find out the app drawer in the parent section or in the hierarchy up the level, whereas this build context is actually at the top and this app drawer is actually a child of this context. So this wouldn't work, and that's because this context is a parent of the app drawer, so it will not find the app drawer at all. Now how do we fix this issue? So in order to fix this, what we can do is that we can basically wrap this icon button inside a builder of its own context. So I can say builder, and here I'm going to provide a builder with the build context, and I can say app bar context, and here we can basically do return and this. Now instead of passing this context, we can pass the app bar context. So what would happen now? Once we have this app bar put into the home, we have the context of this builder of this leading widget, which is the builder widget. Now this app bar context is actually a child of the app bar. So it now tries to find its parent app drawer, which actually exists. So now this will actually work fine. So what I'm going to do is that if I click here, you can see that now it works because this off method is now able to find the app drawer in the parent hierarchy, and that's how we have fixed this issue. Now I can also click on any of these items, as you can see, and the app drawer doesn't close, and this is actually what we wanted. So this works fine. I can click the toggle button and everything is fun and games. Now the next thing that we need to do that you might have seen in a lot of applications is that if the drawer is opened and the user clicks on this main content, the drawer automatically closes. We don't have that functionality now, so the user always has to click this button, which is not much fun. So how do we tackle this issue? We are going to go to app drawer, and here we have this child here. So instead of directly using this widget.child, we can wrap this inside a gesture detector, and then inside we can basically use the onTap method. So I'm going to indent this a bit, and then I'm going to use the onTap method. Now what we need to do here is that we need to check if we have the drawer opened, and as you know, we do that by checking if controller.is completed. So is completed means that we have the drawer opened, and if that's the case, then we close the drawer on tap of the main content. So we are going to say close, and that's it. So if I save this now and if I run this again, you will see that we open the drawer and then we can click here, no problem so far. And if I click here, we are now closing the drawer, and that's what we wanted. And if I now click here, nothing happens because this would only work when we have the drawer opened as our condition. So the user can tap this one, select any of the things, and then if the user decides not to do anything and just click here, the drawer closes itself. So now this has a really nice animation and also some great user experience that you learned with different techniques that we have combined. And that's it for this video. But it's actually not over because we cannot drag to open the drawer at the moment, and that's something that most of the users use on their mobile phones. So this actually requires a bit of complex logic and manual handling, and that's where the fun begins. So I'm going to teach you in the next video how we can use different gesture detectors to kind of animate this whole transition when the user is swiping. And we will also see some corner cases like what happens if the user stops dragging in the middle. So that's gonna be fun, and I'll see you in the next video.